Good afternoon and welcome to Carolina Catholic Spotlight Show. I'm Gail Barringer and my guest today is a local Carolinian, Melanie Rotondi. Melanie just recently married Rick Rotondi and he's the founder of Cynical Productions. He's an author and he's the producer of the new docuseries Messiah. Melanie, you and Rick are making beautiful music together, as they say. Actually, you have a wonderful apostolate and have a lot of exciting projects in the works. And we'll talk about those things, but we'll talk about more. But first, I want our listeners to know a little more about you. So tell me about your background. I know you grew up Catholic, right? And in the South, is that right?
Yes, I did. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, St. Peter's Catholic Church there. My mother and father were both very involved in church, and not just with titles, but I saw a lot of hands-on community service and a lot of care for others, especially during the civil rights movement in the South. My parents were behind-the-scenes forces for helping a lot of people move forward at that time. Daddy sponsored the first Vietnamese refugee family that came to Columbia, and I saw that, and it was just a beautiful inspiration for me.
Well, yeah, it sounds like your parents were a great inspiration to you, and I know that I've known you for like almost 30 years probably, and I know that you're a very devout Catholic, and you love the church, and you've always been very involved in the church and the community. I know your parents were involved in so much too. You just mentioned some of the things. Give me some other examples of how they shaped your love for the church and your faith.
Well, I grew up with, of course, Sunday Mass, and we'd have our, lots of family around. Always our home was the home everybody came to in the greater family. So just having that welcoming spirit always there was real important for me. But noticing and having it on the radar of what the needs were, not just in the family, but the community, I just grew up with that instilled in me. And so even now, to this day, I just keep moving forward with that. So my parents are just amazing. I'm very grateful for what they've done for me.
Absolutely. Well, I know you homeschooled for like 13 years, and during that time, you developed a close relationship with the Missionaries of Charity at Charlotte. You have an awesome story about a summer camp experience. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I lived, kind of far away from uptown, so when I take a little trek into town with the kids, my kids, we tried to make it count. So one day on the way in, I felt like I had a little nudge to go see the sisters. And I thought, no, I've got to run errands, but it was heavily go see the sisters. So I thought, I better go now or I'll get busy and not stop. So I went over to their little house when they were on Torrance. And sister came to the door and she said, "Oh, Melanie, the Holy Spirit sent you. Are you going to help us with summer camp?" And I said, "Well, sure. Yes, I am." So she invited me to be over the little 7- and 8-year-old boys. And for 6 weeks, I did that daily summer camp. Well, these little boys were adorable. They were from poor families and Vietnamese refugee families. And, they kept me busy trying to come up with ideas of things to do, to have fun with them and teach them about Jesus. Well, there was one little boy. He was a handful, but I loved him so much, and I just gave him a lot of extra leverage because I knew he had a great spirit. Well, the last day of summer camp, after all that, just a lot of stuff going on during the year, that whole summer, he said, "Miss Melanie, I love my mama and I love you."
Oh.
And it just melted my heart. And I thought, all this was worth it. This little child is so special. But
Great.
The Missionaries of Charity had they would come out and visit me during the homeschooling years and visit the family. And my late husband, David, loved to fish and had a boat. He'd go catch a lot of striped bass. So I'd give them fish. So one year around Thanksgiving, they said, "Do you have any fish?" And I said, "Well, sure." They said, "Well, could we come and get some? Our refugee families would rather have fish than turkey." So we brought them a whole bunch.
Oh,
the fun,
great.
I guess yeah.
That's great, Melanie. I love that story. And that is so biblical. Fish instead of turkey. That's wonderful. I know.
Yeah.
Before homeschooling years, you were a frequent speaker and behind-the-scenes advocate for at-risk students. Tell us about that.
Well, when my kids were still in public school, I was aware that there were some issues going on in the public schools where kids were getting passed on from one grade to the next without mastering the skills necessary to do that. And also, my heart bled for all the busing that was going on. And a lot of times it was the poorest children being bused to the richest areas, the more affluent areas. And I felt that wasn't fair to their families. So I would talk to the school board members and go forward and ask, what can we do? How can we make it better? So during that time of discussion, magnet schools became a thing in Charlotte. And part of that, too, was that now that the affluent families a lot of times are now going to go to the inner city schools. And then the families there, their parents could be more involved, where before they didn't have a way to get out to suburban areas to go do activities, PTA, whatever there might be going on. So I felt like it was a big step for Charlotte and for the children. So I was really happy to be involved with that.
Oh, yeah, I think that's wonderful. I believe, we talked about the fact that you homeschooled and all. And homeschooling, I think, led to a very interesting hobby. Will you tell us about that hobby that you have?
Yes. You want to do things and make it fun. And I love science. So I decided it might be fun to get a hive of bees and teach my kids about honeybees. And so we got a little hive out in the yard, and they wanted to see inside the hive. So I had a beekeeper friend, and he made us an observation hive with a little tube that went out the sunroom window. So then we could watch the actual hive and watch the bees and see what they were doing. Well, this thing grew. We started with one little hive, and then it eventually led to like 120 hives and a whole business of honey. But I learned so much, and I just became, endeared already with a lot of the public school teachers because of what I had done before. So they said, Melanie, could you come in and teach us, do a little presentation and teach the kids about honeybees? So I said, sure. So I put a little deal together, and I got a beehive that was empty, and I put on my little bee suit, and I put together a little program, and I went in, and that's probably been over 20 years ago now, and I still go, and I'll teach the kids K-5 about honeybees and just how important they are to the environment, but also, you can't say a whole lot in that forum, but you can at least open the doors and have kids think about how nature works together. So I've been able to do that, and it's been really special.
That is special, and I know the kids really loved it. And, they call me the Bible lady. We'll call you the bee lady, right?
That's right.
You are the
biblical thing, like flowing with milk and honey, right?
That's right. And like you said, how do you still have bees now?
I do. I still have 2 hives. This winter I was able to get a couple that are called Buckfast bees, and they were developed by Brother at Buckfast Monastery in England back in the last century. So I still have honeybees, and I still marvel, and I'm waiting to get 2 more Varroa sensitive hygienic queens in later this summer. But I'm just trying to keep it moving forward. I had a little move where I left the old home and moved to the new home, and for a little bit there, didn't have bees for, I guess, a year. So I'm glad to have bees again.
Yeah, I've been fascinated learning about your bees. I know you went on a little vacation or something, and when you came back, your bees had flew the coop. They had gone, right?
Yeah, I took a trip and came back, and I guess they were mad I didn't want to bring them with me. So I give up. I thought about it, but I said, no, I do want to keep having honeybees, and I got more. But I think, too, that, it's good to, what happens out in the hive and actually in nature, after reading so much with Rick's Messiah study and learning about theophanies, which I never even knew that word until I met Rick.
Right.
How God reveals himself. And I'm like, golly, he's revealing himself in nature all the time. But with bees especially, I see how, a little flower, when it needs to be pollinated, will put off nectar. And that wonderful aroma brings in the pollinators, the honeybees. Well, on top of that, little did we know, the honeybees have like infrared vision, so they see things different. Most flowers have a black infrared area right in the area where the bee needs to land to be pollinated, sip up the nectar. So it's like something's guiding them in. We know who that is.
Yes.
come in, they sip up the nectar, and at the same time, their little fuzzy thoraxes are spreading pollen grains all around, and the little plant becomes pollinated, and it becomes, then it goes on to be whatever it is. It stops producing nectar at that point, and the bee goes on back to the hive and makes her honey from the nectar. But just how nature works together like that is amazing to me, that the flower knows to stop attracting the bees go on and do something different. And I just love that. I think it's really nice to see it.
I think that's fantastic. I know when you moved from Charlotte, and that's a great analogy, by the way, with the scriptures and all, and God and how God works. It's beautiful. I know you moved from Charlotte to a small town in South Carolina, York, South Carolina. You were in the largest Catholic church in the whole United States, and you went to about the smallest. Tell us about that church, the name of the church, and tell us about it.
Well, I moved to Little York Divine Savior, and gosh, York, South Carolina is such a welcoming town. Everybody there is very friendly, and the church itself is just beautiful in its simplicity. Father Adilso is just, I think he has charismatic gifts. I really do. He seems to think the same. You're sitting there, you're all hearing the same homily, but he's speaking very much to each person's heart. So that's awesome. Right after I went there, he asked me if I would consider representing our little church on the oratory committee for the planning of their annual function, the big Valentine's dinner dance. So I said, sure, I'll do that. So the first year was the year I had planned to go to the Holy Land. I said, I might miss a few meetings. He said, that's okay. It turned out to be a really amazing opportunity for me, too, to learn about St. Philip Neri.
Right. Tell us about St. Philip Neri.
Well, I never knew a thing about him except, I did attend St. Philip Neri in Fort Mill once in a while, but I didn't know much about the saint. So in my having to write his historical biography for this, I learned that he lived around, 1500s, about the same time as Ignatius and Xavier, and he was over in Rome. So he and Ignatius and Xavier were friends. He was very moved by Ignatius's spiritual exercises, and of course those were all developing at that time. He was also moved by Xavier's travels, and he even wanted to follow Xavier and do the same thing. But the Pope said, no, we want you here. Rome is your place. So he noticed that the young people there were falling away from the church, and that disturbed him. So he thought about it and prayed about it, and he came up with a plan to bring the young people, perhaps get them interested again. So he came up with what we call the one-day pilgrimage. Rick and I are calling him our apostle pilgrims. He would do daily, I don't know how often, I guess it was maybe once a week, walk around Rome with the youth. They'd sing, they'd have fun, they would take picnics, they'd go to the 7 major basilicas, and through that, he did bring a lot of youth back into the church, and they loved him because he had such a beautiful spirit. The Oratorians carry that forward too, even here in Rock Hill. They have this spirit of singing and welcoming and lots of joviality. It's beautiful. I love being around them. They're a lot of fun.
I know you do, and I know that you had like 3 or 4 of them at your wedding, and that was beautiful. I loved it, and I know you're very close to the priests there, and you love them very much. And I think it's great. You bring up the fact that St. Philip Neri, did these pilgrimages, and so let's talk now about all the wonderful things that you and your husband are doing, and how you got involved, not only with his apostolate, but with him personally. I know in October of 2018, you went to the Holy Land with Rick and some others that he was filming the Messiah series. How did you become involved in the production process and the filming of Messiah?
It was totally just happenstance. I had another good friend that was helping him do things, and I said, if you need me to do anything, just let me know. So it started out just helping find a conference room for them to all meet and talk about the filming. So I did that. And then I think the second day or so, we were there in Bethlehem. And the pilgrims that weren't part of filming were to go off to the Nativity Chapel, which I did. And they were taking a little while with their filming, so I got a little bored and I started walking around, and I saw they were out in the shepherd's field, and they were hot, and the sun was beaming down, and I didn't see any water. And I thought, wow, they need some water. So I went and I took a little 2 block or so walking to Bethlehem, and I brought a bunch of waters back, and they were so grateful. Well, then I noticed Leonardo's wife, Patty, was on the ground and having a time with the wind because the teleprompters weren't working right. It was too bright. So she was having to take script to whiteboards, and the wind was blowing them everywhere. So I went over there and just sat down and started helping her tape everything, and we were keeping it moving so they could film in a timely way. So one thing led to another, and, they were just, Melanie, Rick said to me, would you mind helping us? And I said, well, I'd love to. And that's how it sort of started with me just working behind the scenes with the filming of Messiah. And I enjoyed it. And, we had one little story where we were in Masada, beautiful, beautiful area. And, they were allowed to film there, but there were lots of pilgrims from all over the world at the same time. So I kind of took on to myself the little job of, just kind of standing in the spot where they were filming so that the others might sort of walk the other way. And that worked pretty well. So just behind the scenes, it was lovely.
That's so you always notice what other people need, and you're always there to help. And that's wonderful. And I'm sure Rick saw that too. And that led to a closer relationship down the road. But, to be in the Holy Land, it brings the Bible alive, and it's such an amazing experience. How did your pilgrimage and involvement with Messiah production affect you spiritually?
Well, the most profound thing for me was when I visited the place where the true cross had stood. And we were able to place our hands in that hole where the cross had stood. And I just sobbed. I sobbed and sobbed. It was such a moving moment for me. So then after that, there was also another moment where we were able to go and touch our hands to the place where Jesus is thought to have ascended. And again, it was that sobbing moment. Just can't even explain it, but the air is different there. And I just felt so immersed in the Spirit of the Lord that there's just nothing else like it. And I understood why I had read that, I forget how far back, but early church fathers would often call that pilgrimage to the Holy Land the fifth gospel experience.
That's right.
That's how it affected me. And I became just passionate early on to try to get other people to do this and to, go and visit and see what that would be like, because it's just such a moving thing.
It really is. It's amazing. And I've been there twice, and it's just amazing to be in the places that Jesus was, and to touch those places. It brings the Bible alive. It absolutely does. I know you had talked about, St. Philip Neri and how he did pilgrimages. I know he's a big inspiration to you. With your apostolate, you and Rick's apostolate, Cynical Productions, and all, you're planning to do pilgrimages. What are some ways that you want to do that? You mentioned a little bit about that before, but expound on that.
Well, there's a lot of people that do amazing pilgrimages, and so they're all doing a marvelous job. I think ours is maybe the different might be that we want to educate our pilgrims, if possible, before they go. The Messiah study that you and Steve were so grateful are going to be hosting starting July 4th for the next 8 weeks. This will allow people to get a very firm and grounded understanding of how the historical events come together with biblical prophecy to then reflect and reveal that Jesus is indeed the Messiah. And when you visit these places, you have a much better understanding of where you are and what they mean. So Rick and I spent a lot of time working on the itinerary to make it flow well, to make it understandable. So I think, we started out with, Jesus saying, come, follow me. And then we have several days of learning about Jesus, experiencing several things that occurred in his life. And at the end, we end it with, go ye forth. So we want people to then have their hearts set on fire, to go forth and to have not just that fifth gospel experience, which is amazing, but the incredible understanding of how it all fits with Bible prophecy and history.
Right. Now, for those listeners who don't really know anything about Messiah, just give us a brief introduction to what Messiah is. This is something that your husband has authored and produced. And I know we talked about you going to Holy Land and helping him with that, but some people listening might not know what this is all about. So tell us about that, and also about the fact that that's going to be shown on EWTN and other Catholic TV and other places. And so talk about that a little bit.
Well, Messiah is an 8-part docuseries, and so it just takes everyone through the whole of salvation history, going back as far as Abraham to, well, even Adam and Eve, and then on through Moses, David, the kings, and then how throughout all of this, all of it, there's all this foreshadowing, these things coming forward, the theophanies of God showing us where it's all leading. And the lead up is, of course, to Jesus as the Messiah. To have that put together in a flowing series that one like me, because I'm not smart like Rick, that you can go, wow, this makes sense to me. It gives it so much more meaning. And then to have like you and Steve break it down with the Bible study, the study guide, I think that people are going to be amazed at just how much there is to learn. I learn something new every single time I watch it, and I'm probably the person that's watched it more than anybody else. Right. It doesn't get old. It's just very, very rich in material. So I'm very proud of him. He's such a good and beautiful man. Very blessed that God brought us together.
Yes, amen. And you two make a wonderful pair and a great partnership. And, for those listening, the Messiah series, like Melanie said, is an 8-part video series. It's going to be shown on EWTN starting July 4th at 6 p.m. and for 8 weeks for each part. And we want to invite you, everyone that's listening, to tune in to that. And then afterwards, as Melanie said, my husband and I will be doing a study discussion thing on Facebook Live, starting at 7 p.m. on July 4th. And we invite everyone to tune into that and listen, and hopefully, get involved. Watch the series, and then we can discuss it. And Rick has a wonderful offering for you for the video series and the study guide, a great offer. And so we hope you'll tune into that. I know that Melanie and Rick are doing a lot of other things. In addition to this, Melanie, you and Rick are planning pilgrimages as well. Long pilgrimages, like to the Holy Land and stuff, but also some short pilgrimages to, like you mentioned earlier. Expound a little bit on that.
Yeah, we are also planning to next year have a few more pilgrimages to the Europe area. We want to go to Rome and Assisi. We want to go, eventually there will be a tour of the French shrines. So there's all sorts of things in the works. And again, all of it is to help people to really understand the Lord and to see how he's working forward, not even just in the Holy Land, but moving forward now in the last 2,000 years in Europe. And eventually we hope to go other places like maybe Guadalupe. And so there's just a whole open world out there, places to see, help people grow their faith and become more fervent and realize how God he's still with us all the time and still in the miracle business. Amazing things happen. One of the things, too, that we're looking at doing is we talked about it for a while. It's called Sundays at the Shrine. And this past week, we had the opportunity to go to the Divine Mercy Shrine and in Massachusetts, Stockbridge. It was very beautiful, and gosh, I loved it, but there were so many empty seats. And Rick and I both thought, wow, it'd be wonderful if we could have little, day trips from surrounding cities to bring people in and not just see the shrine, but have some camaraderie develop, have people do something fun, like maybe the Norman Rockwell Museum's close by there, a great dinner, but get to meet other people of like faith and thoughts and meet people. I think it's needed. And I feel like these shrines certainly need pilgrims. People need to go and see and experience the mercy and the love they feel when they leave.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think, not only, because everybody knows about pilgrimages, where you go for 10 days to the Holy Land, or you go 10 days to Ireland or whatever, which are also awesome and wonderful, especially to go to the Holy Land. But these, what do you call them? Sundays at the Shrine?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a fantastic idea. I mean, to go
Thank you.
and take people on these short pilgrimages where you can go on a chartered bus, air conditioned or heated or whatever the season may be. And like you said, go to a shrine, have mass, maybe have a dinner, go to some other location, something there. A fun time, a spiritual time to combine the spiritual and the fun. I think it's fantastic. I look forward to going on these. I want to go.
Me
And
too. I want to too.
I think it's a great idea. And I think, you're the first person I've heard to say anything about doing something like this. And I think it's going to catch on. I really do. I hope so. I hope those listening today will be interested and want to know more about this. I know, talking about shrines and things, I know that this is not a shrine, but I know that every day when you go to work, you on the way, you stop by Belmont Abbey, which is right here in our area. And I know that means a lot to you. Tell us about your experiences and how drawn you are to Belmont Abbey.
Well, it's funny. I've always loved Belmont Abbey because it kind of has roots in Columbia too, where I grew up. The pastor from like my maternal lineage back in the 1800s, Jeremiah Joseph O'Connell, I think he donated the land for Belmont Abbey after he left Columbia back in the 1800s. But then I love to listen to Bishop Fulton Sheen. So I was listening to his tapes months ago, and he was talking about one of the things that he asked the apostles, Jesus asked the apostles to do, was to just sit with him and pray with him and to be with him. And he said early on in his ministry, that he made a decision he would do a holy hour every day. And so I thought, I can't do a holy hour every day with working full time, but, I could stop by Belmont Abbey. It's not that far out of the way, and I can go and sit with Jesus. That's the one thing about a Catholic church. You walk in, the little candle is lit. You know that he is truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity there in the tabernacle. And I can sit. If it's not 5 minutes, I can at least be there. And I just feel since I've been doing that, I've just had all sorts of blessings come up. And I've seen people seen a lot of good things happen. And you just don't know exactly how far reaching your prayers might be. But, we have to believe in the power of prayer. And I do. So that's part of why I go. And I think that pilgrimage itself is a biblical thing, that back in the days of Jesus, they would go to Jerusalem, and that was just the Jewish way, was to go in and celebrate. So I feel like we're carrying that forward and taking that extra effort to do something sacrificial for God, to show our love and our care and just being there and being obedient and loving him.
Amen. That is so wonderful. I know that on Facebook you post some beautiful pictures sometimes when you're at Belmont Abbey. They're very inspiring to people that look at your Facebook page, and we almost feel like we're there with you. And I can feel your love and your spiritualism there, that you're really drawn to that. I know years ago when I first became Catholic, I was very drawn to Belmont Abbey as well. And, it's not a shrine, but it's a very beautiful place, a wonderful abbey there with these great abbots, Abbot Placid and all the others there. And it's a good place to go and visit. And that is something, another place where you could take pilgrims. I mean, people from outside, and tell them the history of Belmont Abbey and some of the things that they might not know.
There's one thing that's very interesting when you walk in the foyer there. There's this huge stone. It's their baptismal font. And I don't know the exact words verbatim, but this stone was once used for slaves to be auctioned on. And Belmont Abbey somehow got that. And they said this was once used, for this horrible thing, but now it's used to set men free through the waters of baptism. And I think that's a really beautiful testament, especially in the South.
Yes.
have transformed, you know.
Oh, wow. That is beautiful. I love that. Melanie, unfortunately, I think we're out of time. I know that you and Rick are on vacation, and so I appreciate so much you taking the time to do this interview. Enjoy the rest of your day and safe travels home. I look forward to seeing you when you get back.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
just have everyone go to cynical.tours. They can learn more about our pilgrimages.
Yes, Cynical. Tell us again.
Cynical.tours.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I'm Gail Buckley Barringer with Carolina Catholic Radio Network, and I invite you to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. for the Carolina Catholic Spotlight Show.